Look, I need you to understand something right from the start. When they tell you humans are dangerous, they are not exaggerating. They are not trying to scare you. They are trying to save your miserable life. Because what happened to Warlord Kraj, that was not a battle, that was a biology lesson nobody asked for, and tuition was paid in shattered bone and screaming regret. Warlord Kraj was, and let me be absolutely clear about this, a complete and total badass. At least, that is what every single being in the Vrexian Empire believed, including Kraj himself, standing at 9 feet of pure scaled muscle with 4 arms that could bend steel bars like they were overcooked noodles. He had personally conquered 14 star systems. 14. He had torn through the Keltorian defense force like they were made of wet paper. He had made the Thoraxian swarm lords cry for their mothers, assuming they had mothers, which honestly we are still not sure about. The Vrexian Empire did not negotiate. They did not do diplomacy. They showed up, they flexed their extremely impressive muscles, and species either bent the knee or got bent in half. It was a simple business model, and for 3 centuries it had worked beautifully. Kraj himself had killed over 2,000 warriors in personal combat. 2,000. He kept count. He had a little notebook and everything. Very organized for a genocidal warlord, you have to give him that. So when the Vrexian scout ships stumbled upon Earth and its scattered colonies, the High Command practically threw a party. Finally, a new species to add to the collection. The humans looked soft, pink, squishy. They had only 2 arms, which was frankly embarrassing. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom sacs, nothing. They wore their skeletons on the inside like amateurs. The initial reports described them as, quote, aggressively mediocre, unquote. One scout captain said they looked like they would bruise if you stared at them too hard. Kraj read the reports and laughed. Actually laughed. A sound like rocks being ground together in a garbage disposal. He volunteered immediately to lead the conquest personally, not because he thought it would be challenging, oh no, because he thought it would be funny. He genuinely believed conquering humanity would be the military equivalent of a coffee break, a little light genocide before lunch, maybe work up a minor sweat. His personal combat record was the stuff of legend. He had defeated the champion of Cronus, a beast that stood 12 feet tall and had acid for blood. He had killed 3 hive queens in single combat simultaneously. While they were all trying to eat him, he had once grabbed a Mantok berserker by the ankles and used him as a weapon to beat 7 other Mantok berserkers to death. The Mantoks actually erected a statue commemorating that fight. They were not even mad. They were impressed. So when the invasion fleet, 17 warships carrying the finest soldiers the Vrexian Empire had to offer, dropped out of hyperspace above Station Osiris, a small human mining colony on the edge of their territory, Kraj was practically giddy. Station Osiris was nothing special. 3,000 humans, mostly workers, engineers, a few security personnel with guns that looked like toys. The station itself was a rotating wheel of metal and glass, spinning peacefully in the void, completely unaware that their worst day ever was about to begin. Kraj stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Fang staring at the pathetic little station through the viewport. His tactical officer, a nervous little thing named Rex, was reading off statistics. Population count, defensive capabilities, weapon systems. It was all laughably inadequate. The station had exactly 6 defense turrets. 6. The Crimson Fang alone had 400. Warlord, Rex said, his voice shaking slightly because everyone was always slightly terrified of Kraj. Shall we begin the bombardment? Kraj waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. No, no, no. Where is the fun in that? I want to see these humans up close. I want to watch them realize how completely outmatched they are. Hail the station. Tell them their warlord Kraj has arrived and he demands their surrender. And if they refuse, he grinned, showing rows of teeth that had never seen a dentist and did not care. Tell them I will personally come over there and demonstrate what happens to species who waste my time. The message was sent. The response came back within minutes. The station administrator, some human with a boring name like Thompson or Jenkins, accepted the terms of combat. Kraj would fight their champion. 1-on-1. To the death. If Kraj won, the station surrendered. If their champion won, well, that was not going to happen, so nobody bothered thinking about it. Kraj cracked his knuckles. All 16 of them. This was going to be entertaining. The docking procedure took 20 minutes, which Kraj spent doing what he always did before a fight. stretching, shadowboxing, psyching himself up by watching highlight reels of his previous victories. His favorite was still the time he ripped a Gorksian battlemaster's arms off and made the poor bastard watch while he beat his own squad to death with them. Good times, simpler times. The arena they set up was in the station's cargo bay, a massive open space with metal floors and crates stacked around the perimeter. The humans had cleared a circle about 50 feet across and marked it with yellow tape. Yellow tape. Like they were at a child's birthday party. Crash almost felt insulted. Almost. Mostly he felt amused. His honor guard, 12 of the biggest, meanest Rexian warriors in the fleet, marched behind him as he entered the bay. They were there for show, really. Crash had never, not once, needed backup in a duel. The humans had gathered too, a couple hundred of them, pressed against the walls, watching with faces that ranged from terrified to grimly determined. They were so small, so fragile looking. Crash could not understand how a species this delicate had even survived long enough to develop space travel. They looked like they would shatter if you sneezed on them too hard. Station Administrator Jenkins, a balding little man with sweat stains under his arms, stepped forward nervously. "Warlord Crash," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Our champion is ready." "Then bring him out," Crash rumbled, flexing all four arms. "Let me see what pathetic creature you are sacrificing today." The crowd parted, and out walked the most unremarkable human Crash had ever seen. His name, they said, was Marcus Webb. He was not a soldier, not some decorated warrior or enhanced super trooper or cybernetic killing machine. He was a maintenance engineer. He fixed pipes. He repaired air filters. He wore coveralls with grease stains on them and work boots that had seen better decades. He was maybe 6 feet tall, which was laughably short by Vrexian standard. He had brown hair that needed cutting, a jaw that needed shaving, and arms that looked like they had seen some manual labor but nothing impressive. He was holding a simple metal pipe wrench in one hand. Crash stared. Then he started laughing. That horrible grinding sound that made the humans flinch. "This?" he roared. "This is your champion? This soft little grease monkey? Did your actual warriors run away? Did they hide in the bathrooms hoping I would not notice?" Marcus Webb said nothing. He just stood there, calm, rolling his shoulders like he was getting ready to change a tire, not fight a 9-foot-tall alien death machine. His eyes were blue and completely devoid of fear, which Crash found mildly interesting but ultimately irrelevant. Bravery without strength was just stupidity with better lighting. "I almost feel bad about this," Crash stepping into the ring. The metal floor groaned under his weight. "You seem like a decent fellow, probably good at your job, but your leaders have sent you to die, little human. I want you to know that before I start breaking pieces off of you." Marcus finally spoke. His voice was flat, almost bored. "Are you going to talk me to death, or are we doing this?" "Oh," Crash liked that. A little spirit before the end. That would make the victory taste sweeter. "Begin," Jenkins shouted, and immediately scurried backward like his pants were on fire. Crash did not waste time. He lunged forward with speed that should have been impossible for something his size, all four arms reaching for the human. Marcus dodged, barely, rolling to the side. Fast reflexes. Interesting. Crash spun, brought two fists down where Marcus had been a second before. The metal floor crumpled like aluminum foil. Marcus swung his wrench. It bounced off Crash's scales with a pathetic clang that echoed through the bay. "Oh, that tickled," Crash said, grinning. He grabbed for Marcus again. This time he connected. Two hands caught the human's shoulders and Crash lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. Because compared to Crash he did weigh nothing. Maybe 180, 190 pounds. Crash had arm wrestled furniture that put up more resistance. Marcus brought the wrench down hard on Crash's wrist. Once, twice, 3 times. The metal rang but did nothing. Crash's scales might as well have been starship armor. "My turn," Crash said. He slammed Marcus into the ground. Hard. The human hit with a sound like a side of meat hitting a cutting board. The crowd gasped. Marcus groaned, but tried to get up. Crash put one massive foot on his chest and pressed down. He could feel ribs creaking under his boot. "Stay down, little human. This will be over soon." But Marcus was still moving, still struggling, reaching for something, and Crash realized with irritation that the human was not giving up. Fine, time to end this properly. Crash shifted his weight, moved his foot down to Marcus's left leg, right above the knee, and pressed down. Slowly he wanted the human to feel it, wanted him to understand the futility. The leg broke with a crack that echoed through the cargo bay like a gunshot. Marcus screamed. A raw animal sound of pure agony that made several humans in the crowd turn away. His leg bent at an angle that legs should absolutely not bend at. Bone jutted through the skin, white and sharp and glistening. Blood pooled on the metal floor. Kraj stepped back, admiring his work. There. Now do you surrender? Or do I break the other one? He was smiling. He was genuinely enjoying himself. This was going exactly as planned. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was not killing Marcus Webb immediately. His third mistake was turning away to address the crowd, to give his victory speech, to bask in the glory of another easy conquest. Because behind him Marcus Webb was not surrendering. He was not crying. He was not begging for mercy. He was staring at his own broken leg. And he was getting an idea. Kraj turned back around because the human had stopped screaming, which was odd. Usually they screamed for a while. Sometimes they passed out. Sometimes they went into shock. But Marcus Webb had gone silent, and when Kraj looked at him he saw something that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. The human was sitting up. "What are you doing?" Kraj asked, genuinely confused. "Your leg is broken. Very broken. Extremely broken. You should be unconscious right now. You should be crying for your mother." Marcus did not answer. He was breathing hard, his face pale and covered in sweat, but his hands were moving. He had pulled off his belt. He was wrapping it around his thigh above the break, pulling it tight as a tourniquet. His jaw was clenched so hard, Kraj could hear teeth grinding, but his hands were steady. "Human, you have lost," Kraj said, taking a step forward. "Accept defeat with dignity. I will make the end quick." "No," Marcus said. "Just that. No." Like he was declining an offer for coffee, not staring down his own death. Kraj laughed again, but this time it sounded less confident. Something was wrong here. Something was off. Humans were not supposed to function like this. The reports said they were fragile, easily broken. Their pain tolerance was supposed to be average at best. But Marcus Webb was moving like the pain was just background noise, like it was an inconvenience he had decided to ignore. Marcus grabbed his broken leg with both hands, right at the break point where bone was sticking out, where blood was flowing freely, and he pulled. The sound was indescribable. Wet, crunching, wrong on every possible level. But Marcus did not scream. He grunted, his face twisting in agony, but he kept pulling, and the leg separated. Not all the way, the skin and muscle were still holding it together, but the bone, the sharp jagged bone that was jutting out, was now pointing forward like a spear. Kraj stopped walking. "What in the name of the void are you doing?" Marcus looked up at him. His eyes were not scared. They were not even angry. They were cold, calculating. The eyes of someone solving a problem. "Adapting," Marcus said. Then he lunged. It should not have been possible. The human had one working leg. He should not have been able to move, let alone attack, but Marcus pushed off with his good leg, propelling himself forward in a sliding tackle across the blood-slick floor, and drove the sharpened bone of his own broken leg straight into Kraj's ankle. The bone punched through scales that had turned aside bullets. It sank deep, scraping against Kraj's own bones, tearing through tendons. Kraj roared, more from surprise than pain, and kicked reflexively. His foot connected with Marcus's chest, and sent the human flying backward 10 feet. Marcus hit the ground hard, rolled, and did not get up for a moment. Kraj looked down at his ankle. There was a hole in it, a bleeding hole. The human had actually hurt him. Him, Warlord Kraj, conqueror of 14 systems. "You little," Kraj snarled, limping forward. His ankle was already swelling. That was clever. Stupid, but clever. Now I am going to pull your spine out through your throat." He reached down to grab Marcus. But the human rolled again, faster than something with a destroyed leg should move, and this time he had picked up a piece of broken metal from the floor, a shard from where Kraj had crumpled the deck plating earlier. Marcus swung it in a wide arc and opened a gash across Kraj's reaching hand. Not deep, but it bled. It actually bled. The Vrexian honor guard behind Kraj shifted nervously. This was not how these things went. This was not the script. Champions were supposed to die quickly, dramatically, and without putting up any real resistance. They were not supposed to turn themselves into improvised weapons and start carving up warlords. Kraj's confusion was rapidly being replaced by something he had not felt in a very, very long time. Fear. "Stay down," Kraj bellowed and charged. All 9 feet and 800 pounds of alien muscle and rage, thundering across the cargo bay. He would crush this insane human flat. He would stomp him into paste. He would end this embarrassing nonsense right now. Marcus waited until the last possible second, then threw himself sideways. Crash's momentum carried him past, and as he went by, Marcus drove the metal shard into his knee joint, the weak point in the armor. Every species had one. Marcus twisted the metal and yanked it sideways. Crash's knee buckled. He crashed to the ground face first with a boom that shook the entire bay. For a moment there was absolute silence. 800 pounds of Warlord, flat on the deck, brought down by a maintenance engineer with one leg. Crash pushed himself up with his forearms, snarling, fury, replacing fear. He spun onto his back just in time to see Marcus dragging himself forward, pulling himself along with his arms, his ruined leg trailing behind him, leaving a smear of blood across the metal floor. But he was not retreating, he was advancing. Toward Crash. His face was a mask of pain and determination, and something else. Something that made Crash's blood run cold. Purpose. Marcus reached Crash's head, raised the metal shard, and brought it down toward his eye. Crash caught his wrist with 2 hands, stopping the blade an inch from his face. He squeezed, expecting to hear bones break, expecting the human to drop the weapon, but Marcus held on. He was pushing down with everything he had, his whole body weight behind it, and the blade was inching close slowly, impossibly. "What are you?" Crash gasped. Marcus's answer was to headbutt him in the face, once, twice, 3 times. Crash's nose crunched. Blood, his own blood, filled his mouth. He threw Marcus off with all 4 arms, sent him tumbling away, and scrambled to his feet. His ankle was damaged. His knee was damaged. His nose was broken. He was bleeding from 6 cuts. And across from him Marcus Webb was getting up again, standing on one leg, using a support strut from a nearby crate as a crutch, still holding that bloody piece of metal, still staring at Crash with those cold, dead, terrifying eyes. "Impossible," Crash whispered. But it was not impossible. It was happening. And for the first time in his long, violent, successful career, Warlord Crash realized something that made his stomach twist. He might actually lose this fight. The humans watching had gone completely silent. The Vrexians looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. And in the center of the cargo bay, surrounded by blood and broken metal, 2 fighters stared at each other. One of them was a legendary warrior who had never known defeat. The other was a man who had decided that today, physics and biology and common sense were all just polite suggestions he was choosing to ignore. Crash charged again. Because what else could he do? Surrender was not an option. Retreat was not an option. There was only forward, only violence, only the hope that he could end this before it got any worse. It got worse. This was not a fight anymore. This was a nightmare wearing a human face. And Crash could not wake up. He swung with all 4 arms. A flurry of strikes that should have pulverized the human into red mist. Marcus blocked 2 with the metal strut, took 1 hit to the shoulder that spun him halfway around, and used the momentum to bring his makeshift crutch around in a vicious arc that caught Crash right across the jaw. Stars exploded in Crash's vision. His teeth, scattered across the floor like dice. How was this happening? How was a creature that weighed less than half what Crash weighed standing on one leg fighting back? Marcus was not just surviving. He was learning. Every exchange, every clash, he was adapting, finding weak points, exploiting them, fighting like someone who had spent his entire life figuring out how to fix broken things and breaking things that needed fixing. Crash grabbed for him with all 4 hands, got 2 on Marcus's shoulders, started to squeeze. Those fragile human collarbones would snap like twigs. But Marcus dropped the metal strut, reached up with both hands, and jammed his thumbs into Crash's eyes. Not hesitating, not flinching, just going straight for the most vulnerable spot he could reach. Crash screamed and released him, staggering backward, vision blurred and watering. He could hear his honor guard shifting behind him, muttering to each other in panicked clicks and hisses. They wanted to help. They wanted to intervene. But the rules were clear. This was single combat. Sacred, inviolable. They could only watch as their warlord, their undefeated champion, got systematically dismantled by a human maintenance worker. "Think," Crash told himself, blinking away tears and blood. "Think. You have fought thousands of battles. You have killed creatures bigger than this, stronger than this, meaner than this. This is just one small human. One small human." But humans, Crash was beginning to understand, were not small in the ways that mattered. He rushed forward again, trying to use his superior mass, trying to simply run Marcus over like a freight train. Marcus sidestepped, barely, that ruined leg somehow still supporting his weight, and as Kraj passed he grabbed onto Kraj's back, climbed him like Kraj was a tree and Marcus was some kind of deranged monkey. Kraj felt hands scrabbling for purchase on his armor plates, felt the human's weight settle between his shoulder blades, then he felt Marcus's teeth sink into the back of his neck. The human was biting him, biting, like a feral animal, like something that had forgotten it was supposed to be civilized. Kraj spun, trying to throw him off, but Marcus held on with arms and legs. That broken leg wrapped around Kraj's waist, and kept biting, kept tearing. Kraj reached back with all four arms, grabbed Marcus and finally managed to pry him loose. He threw the human across the cargo bay with all his strength. Marcus hit a stack of crates. The impact should have killed him, should have broken his spine, cracked his skull, ended this madness. The crates collapsed around him in a crash of metal and splintering wood. Dust filled the air. For a moment, there was silence. Kraj stood there gasping, bleeding from a dozen wounds. His ankle was screaming, his knee was barely holding his weight, his face was a ruin of blood and broken bone. He had never been this hurt, not in 1,000 fights, not ever. Please, he thought, please let that have finished it. Please let the human be dead. The dust cleared. Marcus Webb stood up from the wreckage. He was not walking anymore. He was dragging himself forward using a combination of his good leg and sheer spite. His coveralls were shredded. His skin was covered in cuts and bruises. His broken leg was bent at angles that made Kraj's stomach churn. But he was still moving, still coming, and he had found a new weapon in the wreckage. A length of heavy chain, the kind used for lifting cargo. He wrapped one end around his fist. No, Kraj said. He meant it to sound commanding. It came out as a whimper. No, this is not. You should be. Why will you not die? Marcus said nothing. He just kept advancing. One agonizing step at a time. His face was beyond pain now. Beyond anything. He looked like death itself had taken a coffee break and left Marcus to cover the shift. Kraj's honor guard was backing away. Actually retreating. He could see it in his peripheral vision. 12 of the finest warriors in the Rexian military, and they were terrified. Not of losing. Of seeing what happened when humans decided to stop losing. This was the fatal miscalculation. Kraj realized. The thing every species who had ever underestimated humanity failed to grasp. It was not that humans were stronger. It was not that they were faster or tougher, or more advanced. It was that they had spent their entire evolutionary history being prey, being hunted, being killed by things bigger and meaner and better equipped. And somewhere in that history, instead of going extinct like they should have, they had looked at the universe and said no. They had decided that having soft skin and dull teeth, and weak bones, just meant they would have to be smarter, meaner, more creative, more willing to do whatever it took. Marcus swung the chain. It wrapped around two of Kraj's arms, and before Kraj could react, Marcus yanked, hard, pulled Kraj off balance. The warlord crashed to his knees, and Marcus was on him, climbing again, wrapping the chain around his throat, pulling it tight. Kraj grabbed at the chain with his free hands, trying to pry it loose. His vision was darkening at the edges. He could not breathe, could not think, could only feel the chain cutting into his neck and the human's weight on his back and the terrible, horrible understanding that he was going to die here, on this pathetic little station, killed by a man who fixed toilets for a living. He tried to speak, to beg, to offer surrender, but the chain was too tight. Marcus leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Should have just bombed us from orbit." Then he twisted the chain and pulled with everything he had left. Something in Kraj's neck snapped. The sound was like a branch breaking, wet and final. His vision went from dark to black. His arms stopped working, stopped fighting, just hung limp at his sides. Warlord Kraj, conqueror of 14 systems, undefeated champion of the Rexian Empire, slayer of 2,000 warriors, fell forward onto the blood-stained deck of a human cargo bay, and did not get up. Marcus released the chain, let Kraj's body drop. Then he rolled off and lay on his back staring at the ceiling, gasping for air. His chest heaved. His broken leg was a horror show of exposed bone and torn flesh. He looked like he should be dead. By every reasonable medical standard he should be dead. But he was not. He raised one shaking hand and gave the stunned crowd of humans a thumbs up. The cargo bay erupted. Cheers, screams, crying, laughter. All of it mixed together in a sound of pure hysterical relief. Humans were hugging each other, jumping up and down. Someone was playing music from somewhere. Terrible music, but nobody cared. They had won. They had actually won. The Vrexian honor guard stood frozen. staring at Krasu's corpse, staring at the human who had killed him. One of them, a younger warrior named Thex, clicked his mandibles nervously and said what they were all thinking. "We should leave, right now, we should leave, and never come back." The others agreed. Wordlessly they picked up Krasu's body, turned, and walked out of the cargo bay, walked back to their ship. Within the hour the entire Vrexian fleet had jumped to hyperspace and disappeared. No demands, no threats, no revenge attacks. They just left. Back on Station Osiris, medical teams were frantically working on Marcus, stabilizing his leg, pumping him full of painkillers and antibiotics, and probably several things that were not FDA approved. But who cared at this point? He was awake, lucid, and when Administrator Jenkins leaned over him and asked how he felt, Marcus looked up with eyes that had seen hell and decided it was not that impressive. "Like I need a vacation," Marcus said. Then he passed out. The story spread like wildfire through the galaxy. Not slowly, not gradually, like someone had lit a match in a room full of gasoline and then run away screaming. Within a week, every species with faster-than-light communication had heard some version of what happened on Station Osiris. The details got fuzzy in places. Sure, some versions claimed Marcus was 7 feet tall. Others said he had cybernetic implants. A few particularly creative retellings insisted he had eaten Krasu's heart while it was still beating, which was objectively false but sounded cool enough that nobody bothered fact-checking. But the core truth remained constant. A human, injured, outmatched and armed with nothing but his own broken body parts, had killed the most feared warrior in the Vrexian Empire, had strangled him with a chain while balanced on one leg, had refused to die even when biology demanded it. The Vrexian Empire went silent for 3 days. Then they issued an official statement. They were withdrawing all military forces from human space, effective immediately. They were reclassifying humans from prey species to apex predators. They were updating their combat manuals to include an entire section titled "Things We Do Not Fight." And guess whose picture was on the cover? Other species took note. The Keltorians, who had been planning a minor skirmish over some disputed mining rights, suddenly decided those rights were not that important actually. The Thoraxian swarm, who had been eyeing Earth's oceans as potential breeding grounds, discovered a sudden interest in literally any other planet. Even the Mantox, who respected strength above all else, sent a diplomatic envoy to formally request that humans please never visit their homeworld because they did not want to risk accidentally offending anyone. Krasu became a legend, but not the kind he had wanted. He was not remembered as a hero. He was remembered as a warning. A cautionary tale told to young warriors across 100 worlds. Do not underestimate the humans. Do not assume soft means weak. Do not think that just because they look fragile, they will break easily, because humans, it turned out, had been breaking for millennia. They had just gotten really good at putting themselves back together and continuing the fight. There were songs about it. Bad songs mostly. The Vrexians had a funeral dirge that translated roughly to "he thought they were harmless. Poor stupid bastard." The humans naturally turned it into a drinking anthem. Marcus Webb recovered, mostly. He walked with a limp for the rest of his life. But he did walk. He went back to fixing pipes and air filters. He refused every interview request, every book deal, every movie offer. When reporters asked him how it felt to be the most famous human in the galaxy, he said it felt like he needed people to stop bothering him so he could finish recalibrating the waste recycling system. He died 40 years later peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family. His funeral was attended by representatives from 73 different species. None of them were Vrexian. So yeah, that is the story of how Warlord Krasu learned the hard way that humans do not follow the rules, that pain is negotiable, that surrender is optional, that when you back a maintenance engineer into a corner and break his leg, you have not won the fight, you have just given him a weapon he did not have before. The galaxy learned its lesson that day. Humans are not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the smartest, but they are absolutely, without question, the most stubborn. And in a universe full of claws and fangs and natural armor, stubbornness turns out to be the most dangerous weapon of all. Do not mess with humans. Seriously. Just do not. It is not worth it. Trust me on this one.